Welcome to Leave a Legacy Livestream. So, another episode of Leave a Legacy Livestream. And thank you so much for being part of our family, our tribe. It's awesome to be journeying with you every Wednesday at 7 p.m., where we interview, we share the journey of a leader. And today we're diving deep into a story of resilience, purpose, and transformation. 6 years ago, Dr. Alfeen Varghese, faced a chronic fatigue, and which she'll be sharing more, that brought her thriving career as a GP to a halt. And then we're going to be hearing more about that. Not only did she let her adversity define her, but Alfeen has now chosen to rise above it. So we are going to be hearing more from her and leaning on her faith. And she's busy running a medical practice in Albury Wodonga with her from running a busy medical practice in Albury Wodonga with her husband, Dr. Ajit, and now to leading multiple businesses, including Eve, which is Equip, Enable, Empower. She has become a force of empowerment. So through coaching, leading, leadership training, and speaking, and that's how we met. So we both have met for multiple John Maxwell retreats. Alfeen has inspired women and young leaders across Australia and beyond to embrace their worth and live with excellence. So tonight we'll hear from her incredible journey and the practical strategies she's discovered for cultivating a resilient mindset and living with purpose. So Legacy X family, let's give a big round of applause and welcome to Dr. Alfeen Varghese.
Thank you, Joby. Thank you for having me here. It's wonderful to connect again at this platform of yours that you're sharing so wonderfully and actually speaking into the lives of lots of leaders. So thank you for what you're doing. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely. I know we've been trying to get our dates and our stars aligned to make this podcast interview happen, and I'm so glad it's finally come to this point that we both can hear your journey and your story. So thank you so much for joining us, and your story is incredibly powerful, and I know it's going to inspire so many watching tonight. So let's start with a statement you shared with me before, right? Tough times call for tougher minds. So, why does this statement hold such a deep significance in your life, Alfie?
I think growing up in India and completing my medicine, my husband and I both became faith-filled, born-again Christians, and then we decided to work in the mission. And mission for us in the 1990s, early 1990s, was a very remote village in India where we decided to go and spend the rest of our lives, I guess. And that was where I understood the true meaning of the sentence, how tough situations can help you develop tougher minds. I mean, not that I had an easy life, like medicine was hard, getting through medicine in university was hard, but practicing medicine in a situation where you're only depending on God to get you through, where you're the only doctor and you've got this patient who is potentially going to die and you have no clue. I was just a fresh graduate, and for me, in that situation, if I didn't develop the kind of mindset I had to, I would have crumbled and left it and come back to the city, because I grew up in a city and I was a thorough city girl, never left home for any reason other than maybe visiting family in Kerala. But other than that, it was a very sheltered life that I had. So coming from there and going into this raw society in North India where people would walk into the hospital with guns. I'd never seen a live one in my life ever. Seeing that, being threatened by the village head to be seen sooner, all that hierarchy of men and women, power struggle, caste system, that threw me into a deep end very quickly. And I had to really dig into my faith and understand why I was doing what I was doing. And I had to lead myself out of that situation to do what I was called to do, because I believed that that was a time for me to be in the hospital there and serve those people. So that was the beginning of this sentence that has always struck by me, as in tough situations calls for a tougher mindset. Yeah.
I love that, and it's always good to start off with the theme, right? Because when I asked you what topic would you be talking about, and you really knew that tough times call for tougher minds, and thank you for sharing that why this principle shaped your approach and for challenges and especially during those health crises. So maybe let's go into that, turning that adversity into purpose. So maybe 2019 was a pivotal year for you when everything seemed to change. So can you
Yes.
share what that season looked like and how you navigated through that? Yes.
So 2019, in that particular year, I was a very busy 47-year-old, 48-year-old. Yes, my husband and I, along with the third business partner, we were running our medical practice. We had about 10 doctors, so it was a large general practice. We also had an allied health and a specialist center, which had about 27 services, all aspects of allied health, specialist services, a pharmacy, pathology, x-ray, you name it. A patient could come into our center, and it was about an acre, and we had services for anything that they needed. So that was something purpose built that we built from scratch, my husband and I, along with our business partner. So we were running that quite successfully. We had about 12,500 patients on our books. I was also lecturing at the University of New South Wales third medical campus. I was a lecturer. I was also doing leadership training for high school students, about 100 of them, coming through every week and doing a leadership training program which was actually a Victorian government grant that I had got for that. I was also a mentor for business women. I was part of the board. So I was leading quite a busy life. And then suddenly it was all taken away from under my feet. Literally, the carpet was pulled under my feet when I was diagnosed with a tumor in my thyroid. I was also diagnosed with severe arthritis in my neck. I had pinched nerves, so I couldn't sit for even 5 minutes because the nerves would cause severe tingling down my arm. I had severe fibromyalgia, which meant it was terrible aches and pains. And I had to have an operation on my thyroids, quite soon because there was a tumor there that needed to be removed, right? But it was after I had my surgery that I developed severe weakness and severe fatigue, so much so that I couldn't lift a kettle of water. I couldn't hold a cup without resting it on a pillow. I just had no energy. And I saw multiple doctors, and it was either that I was imagining it or I was just being too ambitious and trying to get over my surgery very quickly. So I finally found doctors who would listen. I knew in my mind it was chronic fatigue because I was looking after patients with chronic fatigue. I had done my physician's training from India. So I had done my MD medicine. I was working as a physician in India before I went to England and did my GP training and got my fellowship there. So it was kind of a more holistic care that I was giving my patients. So when I was looking at my own symptoms, I didn't want to self-diagnose, but it was there at the back of my mind that maybe I've ended up with chronic fatigue. And it was when I saw a rheumatologist that he actually confirmed it that I realized that, yes, this is it, and it's going to be a long journey. I may or may not recover from this. And I had to dig deep into my faith and bring that statement up to my forefront and write it down and put it on my on the bed, on the headpost of my bed, because I had a mirror opposite. I could see it, which said, "Tough situations calls for tougher mindset." And at that point, while lying in bed and looking up at the ceiling for literally 23 hours out of the 24 hours, that I realized I need to do something about this. I'm not going to lie here forever. I've got to do what I've got to do. And what could I do? I had no energy. I had 10 minutes of reading energy. I could concentrate for maybe 5 minutes. And if I would read something and go back to it after 2 hours, I would have forgotten that I read it.
Mhm.
So it was that kind of a situation that I thought, right, if I've got 10 minutes of energy, what can I do in those 10 minutes that will give me some purpose to get through this stage? Because going through the journeys of my patients for the last 15, 20 years, I knew some of them will recover, some won't. So putting my head above the water and looking straight ahead and seeing where I could be in 5 years' time, which is where I am now. It's been 5 years. And then looking up and asking God, what can I do? And to send the right people into my life and give me the wisdom to use my life effectively, strategically, and intentionally was something I learned during those weeks and months.
Mm. Wow. That was very, I would say, how just sitting here and hearing that story and how you actually explaining every scene, and just to see that how God's turning your test into a testimony. And it was literally for me sitting here and hearing your testimony. So thank you so much, Alfeen, for being vulnerable and sharing that. And looking back, how did that time of hardship actually help you discover your deeper purpose?
Um, I've always believed that there's a bigger calling to my life. And that was one of the reasons why I joined John Maxwell's training. In fact, if I take a step back, in 2016, I ended up with a tear in my shoulder. We were on a group holiday with the friends from Melbourne. We were doing a trip. We were in Fiji, and I did zip lining. And I ripped my supraspinatus tendon. So I ripped my tendon here, so much so that I couldn't brush my teeth. I had to hold my hand and brush my teeth. I had to move my head because the brush wouldn't move. It was my head that could move. I couldn't, yeah, I was severely in pain and almost, I wouldn't say disabled because that's a very loose term to use, but I couldn't use my arm very well. And it was at that point that I decided to join John Maxwell's coaching, mentoring, and speaking program. The whole leadership thing came in at that point because I thought, at this point in my life, when I'm having this pain, I realized that there's more to life than what I was doing. And I thought, if something's going to happen to me, I do not want to be remembered as someone who worked as a GP and GP alone. And that was when I started the John Maxwell training program, went into leadership. We had started the practice. We had so many staff working in the clinic. So this whole thing about extending and expanding yourself has always come to me in these situations. And so when I was lying in bed with chronic fatigue, I thought, looked back at my life and I thought that was a huge turning point for me, getting that
Mm.
pain. So if John Maxwell's certification program came out of it, imagine what could come out of this. And that's where I thought, I've got to use whatever I have. What I had in my hand was a lot of coaching that I had done, modules I had created for my clients when I was working as a coach. So I found a virtual assistant and I got her working. And I sent all my files to her and told her to create modules. And yeah, it took me about 2 years, but yeah, we succeeded in creating modules, putting it up online. And then, yeah, I was able to curate all of that in that particular phase of my life with the minimal energy I had. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And that's so good because I'm sure most of our listeners, either they could be corporate professionals, uh, or they could be entrepreneurs, but sometimes just having lost that purpose, and sometimes it just that time where I think you took time to rest and found your rhythm is where you found your purpose, and
Absolutely.
now you're living it. So sometimes it's all about just pausing and reflecting on that. So thank you so much, Alfin, for sharing. And now let's transition from coaching and to from being the GP to coaching and leadership. So you've gone from being a GP to now a coach, speaker, and leader, running multiple businesses. So what inspired you to step into this calling? Because you did say John Maxwell. So this there could be a story, there could be a reason why you were inspired to step into this new calling. Yes.
So having born and brought up in India, I was I was very privileged to be raised in a family where my father was a very liberal and progressive Indian man. He gave my sister and myself a lot of opportunities to grow, keeping us very grounded because those were the days. The 70s was women's rights and equality and everything coming through. He kept us very grounded in the fact that yes, women have to fight for their rights, but he also instilled in us a deep respect and understanding for men. And the culture that I very proudly say has been instilled in me, that the man is the head of the house, but I am supportive of him in the sense that he respects me for who I am, not because I'm subjugate to him or I'm subservient, but because I'm an equal. But I still give him, my husband, the respect that he deserves because he's the head of the house. So I was brought up that way. But I was the one who would stand on our street and yell at men who were eve teasing girls, and I would be very, very verbally I wouldn't say aggressive, but I would definitely voice my thoughts about what was unfair and what was not right in society. So I was brought up in that environment where I was allowed to speak and given the freedom to voice my thoughts. And so I grew up quite fearless in Bangalore. And then I went to work in the missions where I was, again, with, like it or not, I was given the opportunity to be a leader there, because in so many situations, I was the only doctor in many hospitals. And people were looking up to me. I was a 23-year-old fresh graduate, but because I was a doctor, I was put into that position of leadership. So I'm coming from there. I noticed that women, irrespective of where they are, where they belong to, whether it was a village in India to Scotland to Australia, there was a lot of disempowerment in society in general. And it didn't come from any specific culture, it was all coming from the mindset. And as I sat in my consulting room, I used to see a lot of patients coming to me with physical illness, which was basically manifesting because of a lack of empowerment, a lack of understanding of their identity, and a huge, huge lack of self-esteem. And I could see the effect that this was having on their families. And I thought, if a woman is empowered, her whole family is empowered in the right manner. And then if the family is empowered, you have a society full of adults and young children who are doing what they can do based on their capabilities and based on their identity. And that actually prompted me to look beyond medicine, outside my consulting room, and to see how I can impact society in a different manner. And that was when I had the supraspinatus tear and I got into John Maxwell's training program. And I think from there, I started the coaching program and I finished John Maxwell's training program, came back from the US, went to our local council, and I spoke to the mayor and I said, look, we've got a whole bunch of young adults or young students in our community that don't know their identity. What are we doing about it? And then we sat down and got a program ready and put it to the Victorian government for grant approval, and we got it. And that started my program with working with high school students, not in positions of leadership because they've got enough of leadership training in their schools. I selected the tier of students below the leaders and saw who could step up into positions of leadership and empower them with the whole leadership training program. So to answer your question, it was just the disempowerment that I saw in my consulting room that led me to then go into the coaching world and speaking and mentoring the community.
That's very inspirational, and thank you so much, Alfeen, for sharing, because it's so great to see that journey from Bangalore, like you said, to Scotland, to Australia, and just to see that how much of impact you're having with not only with the students but also right now, and that's where I want to go to the next question is, tell us more about Eve, Equip, Enable, Empower, and the impact you've seen through your work with women and young leaders.
So with Eve, what I have hoped to achieve is to equip women with the understanding of who they are, enable them to let go of their past and move on to the future with empowerment and to live a life of excellence. That's basically the whole theory of having set up Eve. And it's something that I'm very passionate about. Like I said earlier, if a woman is empowered, her family is, and therefore the society is. There's no disrespect to men, like I said, but I feel that in a family, it's a woman has a lot of clout, and if she uses it wisely, then she stands with her partner and empowers him, and then the children grow up watching amazing role models, and then you've set them up for a future which is where they are unstoppable.
Mm. Mm. No, that's so good, and I think it's a need of the hour as well, and especially even how you were sharing about it's not about the leaders, but it's the level below
Below.
and how much of impact that they need. So let's now talk more about practical tools for everyday resilience. So, what simple practices or mindset shifts can anyone adopt to start living with greater purpose and strength today? Because for us, Legacy X Leadership Roundtable, it's all about application. Because, like we all know, it's everyone can be a philosopher, but very few are the practitioners. So, if you could share from your experience, Alfine, about simple practices or mindset shifts, yes.
I think the first thing, and I think this is quite cliche, it's all about goal setting, isn't it? I'm a very visual person, so I like to see myself doing what I want to do. I see myself speaking, I see myself teaching, I see myself coaching. So I've seen myself do that, and then I start setting my steps of progress. It's not coming backwards, but it's also getting the steps in place so that when I start my journey towards my goal, it's all in place. I'm a planner. I need to have everything set up. I've got my I always believe that if you don't plan, then you fail. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. So
Yes.
so my thing is first the vision and then it's step by step. It's the everyday intentionality that you are doing on a daily basis with the small, with the big things that helps you move intentionally towards your goal.
Mm,
There's no going with the flow with me. There's no going with the flow. The flow can go wherever it wants to. I've got my goals and I go towards my goals very strategically and very intentionally. It's the small things. When I wake up, I have to have my quiet time. I have to have my praise and worship. I have to get onto my treadmill. I have to do my stretches. There are days when I can't do it because it's a tiring day or it's something else has happened, but I'm intentional about setting that time aside. So it's the intentionality with the small as well as with the big things. That's the first thing. The second thing
mm,
is giving yourself a little bit of flexibility and freedom to do other things as well and not being very rigid. Like I said, I do plan, but it doesn't mean I'm very rigid. There are days when
mm,
I'd say I've got 2 hours and I'm not going to do anything other than just read a book. And so I've set aside some time where I have that time for myself. And but again, that's a very planned time, right? So it's
mm,
very strategic, it's very intentional. And the third thing is to remember it's the small wins that you celebrate for the bigger picture. I'm not always
mm,
so focused on the goal, but it's like, oh, I've had my quiet time today. Pat myself on the back. I am my biggest encourager. I'm not looking externally for anyone to encourage me. I know what I'm capable of, and I keep giving myself those little victory laps, those little pat in the back to tell me that I'm okay. So in the end, as a leader, you'll realize it's a very lonely place, right? It's not very often that you can find places like you have created, Joby, where people are coming together and supporting each other. So in that journey as a leader, you've got to realize that it's the faith that you have in God that has prompted you to step into this role of leadership. Your purpose is to serve and not to be served. And finally, it's the small wins that makes the bigger picture come into effect. So in the end, that's those are the practical tips I do. You always have something in your hand rather than
mm,
looking for things around. Like I was lying in bed, I had 10 minutes. That was what I had in my hand. And I always look at my hand and say, what do I have in my hand right now? What am I doing with it? And then that encourages me to move on to the next level. Like there could be days when I'm quite despondent, quite depressed, but because things have not worked out or a client has declined what I put through an amazing proposal for them to grow or for the organization to grow, and it'll be just a straight 2 letter word that says no, thank you. And I'll be like, oh my goodness, that frustrates me because I can see the potential. But then I just
mm,
take a step back and say, what's in my hand? I look at what's in my
mm,
hand and I start back again because it's not who you serve, but it's what you want to do with your serving. It's what is in your heart. It's not the people who are coming in your way. It's but what you carry and who are the ones that you're going to bless. Because it's
Mm,
not
mm,
about you, it's who God wants to bless. And there are people that are just coming into your way that you are just a conduit that God's blessing is going to flow through. So when
mm,
someone says no, it's because it's not the right time, you're not the right fit, and they move on, and you keep focusing on what else, who else can I serve, what's in my hand, and you just keep going on. And I think these are the few tips that I do as a person who's an entrepreneur, who's got multiple businesses, and that's how I move on.
yeah. When I spoke about practical, those are very practical steps and tips, Alfred, and that's exactly what this group needs, and I think it's something that they can actually implement right away, right? So maybe it could be a leading up to Christmas. Now it's a 90-day game plan, right, for the business. What does that look like? What are the big rocks? What are the small rocks every day that
Yeah.
they need to get done, and also having that faith component. I think it's so important of not being served but actually going out there and serving. So I think that's a good segue to our next question, is about how important is faith and community in sustaining resilience over the long term.
It's a very interesting question. When I was struggling with my chronic fatigue, I'd say struggling because it was a struggle for someone who was so busy working 16, 20-hour days to lie in bed for 23 hours out of the 24 hours. It was quite a struggle. But I read a book by Kravitz. I think Kravitz was one of the authors, and he said the 5 aspects for any one person to go through adversity. And out of the 5, he named 5 topics, 5 main headings. And out of the 2 were exactly what you said: faith and social support. Very important that one, we have faith, because when we have faith, we don't lose hope. And when we don't lose hope, we keep going because we are
Mm,
not hopeless, right? We've got hope. So we keep going, and that builds our faith, and the faith gives us hope. So it's like a cycle of events that keeps building each other up. So faith and hope, it's one after the other. One without the other doesn't work. So faith is absolute. The baseline of my life has been when I was sitting in the middle of nowhere. I had a sarpanch of the village, the mayor of the village, come and put a knife in front of me and said that I had to, look after him straight away rather than him waiting in a queue. Faith was when I looked at him in the eye and said, "You better take this knife off," and I left dot, dot, dot. And I was thinking, what did I just say? But faith was what? That this is not the right thing. I have faith in my protector and he will get me through. So small things, faith is so important. Faith is when you're praying over a patient, you have no clue what's happening because you have no x-ray, no bloods, no nothing. You've got 2 lots of antibiotics and some antimalarials, and you've given the patient them and you're praying. Faith is when that person sits up in bed after 12 hours. Faith is demonstrable in every aspect of your life if you choose to allow it to manifest.
mm,
So faith it's very inherent to me, whether it's praying for my adult children and placing them in the palm of God's hands, or praying for a business venture to eventuate, or praying for
mm.
everything, every aspect, or finding a car park in Chadston. It's prayer, it's faith. It's like, God, this was when I was having my fatigue, and I was like, God, I can only walk 2 minutes, right? So I need a car park. And I'd go and I'd wait and I'd find a car park and I'd say, "Thank you, Jesus." And I'd go. So faith for me is the basis of my life. Very important. Social
Mm,
connections, the second most important. If you live a lonely life, you may be an introvert, but you still need social connection. You still need people around you to talk to you, to have a support group. You need people around you. You need your family. It's very hard to live life alone. It's very hard.
mm,
Some people can, and I don't know how they do it, but um, I very closely am associated with a few people in my life, and I continuously seek their advice. They speak to me about things that perturb them. And we continue uplifting each other. So social support is, again, very important.
Mhm. Well said, especially about those two components, because without which, um, because I talk about having four pillars in your life. One is health, one is wealth, one is spirituality, and one is relationships. So I say that this is a table with four legs. So if
Mhm.
you, and when I speak to entrepreneurs, CEOs especially, they might want me to bring me in to increase their wealth, but more or less, I'll be working with them, their relationships, their spirituality, and their health. And that's when I work with these three areas, indirectly the wealth actually increases. So that's where the faith and community comes into that portion. So thanks, Alfeen, for that. And we are all about a legacy and leaving a legacy. So when you think, Alfeen, about the legacy you want to leave, what does that actually look like for you personally and professionally?
I think the legacy that I want to leave is not very broad. It's impacting even just one person in the world and giving them a life transformation. For me, that is the legacy that I would love to leave. It doesn't have to be very broad. It's a one soul, one transformation that I'm looking to achieve. And if I can achieve that in my life, then I think I'm very blessed. Yeah.
Mm, mm. So we just had a Beyond Success meeting just an hour back, and we were talking about it's all about that one soul that
Oh,
can be saved,
yeah,
right? And we're just looking at like how Jesus was looking, the for that one sheep, the lost
yeah,
sheep. So
yeah,
similarly, we're just looking for that one soul, and how can we all work together
yeah,
to that? So important, right? Sometimes we can look very broad and be, but just
yeah,
focusing on that just one aspect actually brings everything into perspective, Alfine. So
definitely.
thank you for that. So I know we're coming to the top of the hour. So if you could share one final piece of advice, and like our group is all about, we have corporate professionals, we have people who are emerging leaders. So for an advice for someone right now who's facing their own tough time, what would you want to say to them?
I'd say if you're someone who's facing a challenge, what I
What
might
I
say
might
is just lift your head above the water. If you're swimming and you're kind of just trying to stay afloat, just lift your head above the water and look straight ahead. The shore is not too far. All you need to do is focus on the shore and look up and ask God to give you the strength to swim your way to the shore. It's not too far. It's never too far because you only are in that part of the sea which is just enough for you to swim, but swim with strength and dignity so you'll reach the shore. You're never too far away from the shore. God will never put you in that situation where you are not having the strength or the capacity to swim to the shore. So that would be my advice to anyone who's going through a challenge. You're never too far away from the shore.
Yeah, and I'm sure that message will resonate with whoever is listening. So, especially, it could be personal, it could be professional, it could be whatever, but you are not too far away from the show. So, thank you, Alfine, for sharing. So, before we wind up, Alfine, please tell us how can our amazing family get in touch with you, or is there any upcoming updates from Eve that you would want to share? Because feel free to share to our family and our network. And maybe below this post, you could put in your personal LinkedIn profiles or website so people can actually get in touch with you. So, how can they get in touch with you, Alfie?
Very simple. My name says it all. It's Alfeen Varghese on Facebook, Dr. Alfeen.Varghese on Instagram, alfeen@gmail.com, and my website's alfeenvarghese.com. So
Yeah,
very simple. You just have to, find me there and I'll be.
absolutely. And we'll definitely put in the details below this post as well. But thank you so much, Alfine, for sharing your heart and your journey and your wisdom with us tonight, because your story reminds us that even in our hardest seasons, we have the power to rise and to rebuild and to create a legacy that impacts generations. So, for everyone watching, I encourage you to take what you've heard today and reflect on how you can cultivate resilience and live with purpose. So, if you want to connect with Alfeen, like she said, learn more about her work or to be even part of Eve Equip, Enable, Empower, we'll drop all the links below, so in the description below. But thank you so much for joining us today for this live stream, and especially a big thanks from the Legacy X family. Alfeen, thank you so much. And let's all keep inspiring and empowering each other to live with excellence and impact. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, Joby. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.